Hi. I decided to make a video as a response to some of your problems and dilemmas because I find that we're not having enough time in class to respond to all of them, and I think there are some fantastic questions that I'd like to respond to in one way or another, and this is a way to try and accomplish this, and feedback will be welcome. So let me start with this one. Macy asks about building classroom libraries, which is a topic we didn't get to, but I think it's an important topic. And this is a practical question. How do teachers go about building a classroom library? And you've all been in practicum classrooms, and some of them have fantastic libraries and some of them are very limited. And part of it has to do with how much teachers are paying attention. Part of it has to do with just how many years they're teaching, how many years they are in the profession. So there are a few things that teachers do to enhance their libraries, and some of them may seem funny, but they actually work rather well. The first thing is that teachers often really do like going to yard sales, and when you go to yard sales all around, you can find some excellent books that people have had in their house. The best yard sales or garage sales to go to are actually of retiring teachers because they often have their own collection. It's fairly large and they sell it for very little, and it's a great opportunity to get a large number of books. The second thing is that book fairs, when they're held at schools, actually allow teachers or librarians to purchase books for free for every X number of books that are purchased, and that's one of the reasons schools like holding those fairs. The last way to do that is teachers get a certain sum of money every year to spend for professional development and for buying all kinds of things for the classroom, and this again can be a great way to start acquiring some books. If you're working in a school that has kids who come from backgrounds who may not be exposed as much to books, you can often write grants or use special funds, Title I funds, or even go to organizations that will help you gather some funds for books. If you do receive books as donations, please go through them because some of them may be old, inappropriate, or other things, so you want to make sure that those are really the things you want to have in your classroom. And I do agree that having a variety of those books really helps. So those are some ways to encourage building a classroom library, and while the big library is great, having a classroom library really helps kids capitalize on that reading time that you have in class when they're done with assignments, when some time frees up. It's a great opportunity to go pick up a book and start it. The next question that I thought was really interesting, and actually most of them are interesting, but there was a great question. Madeline talked about kids taking turns reading and mispronouncing, and then one of the students corrects the others, and she says, I tell her not to blurt, but oftentimes I find myself correcting wrong words or saying the wrong words, or saying the words to students so they will keep on reading, and she was wondering, is that correct? And Ashley actually gave a good response, and I want to build up on that, and that is really, in guided reading, you want to do two things. You want, if the word is beyond the zone of proximal development, if it's beyond their instructional zone, and there's no way they can actually decode it correctly. So a beginning reader meeting a word like alligator, not expecting it without pictures to support that and all of that, I would argue, give them the word and move on. But if it's a word that they should know based on the decoding they know or based on the sight words they know, you really want to make sure that they take the time and try to decode it. So giving them the word at that point is actually making them or supporting them in becoming dependent on you, and really supporting that idea of learned helplessness. It's that look that students do when they don't know to read a word, and instead of trying again or focusing on the first sound and the middle sound and the last sound, what they do is they don't know what it is and then they look up. And their expectation is that you will help them. And that's something we encourage, and that's something we should discourage. So I would argue this is a great opportunity to make them more independent, as long as this is the kind of word that is within their zone of proximal development. and you would definitely don't want other students to give them the answers, because then they're becoming dependent, not on you, but on other students. And again, it's really hard to decode a word you don't know, especially for struggling readers, but in general. So if somebody else is willing to do it for you, why would you? You would just wait and it'll solve itself. So that's a way to think about that. And then Angela talked about a great question, and that is, how do you encourage ELL students to do the think aloud technique? When I do guided reading with lower reading group, I can't seem to get one girl to speak up. She's not confident and just replies, I don't know. And you know, the first time you say I don't know is really hard, but the second time is easier, and then it's a pattern. So how do you get students who do not participate to participate? The first thing you have to ask yourself is, are they not participating because they really can't answer the question? And then you have to build up their knowledge. Or is it really they are fearing to speak up in that situation? And so there are a variety of things that you can do to scaffold that participation, assuming it's not knowledge. If it's knowledge, we've got to teach again, we've got to scaffold and make sure they know. If it's just about the speaking up, we have to ask ourselves first, how important is speaking up? Maybe writing down or speaking to a device like a computer or a phone or something like that on your own is good enough. Send them to a separate space where they don't feel like everybody's watching them, and have them respond orally or in print can solve that situation. And maybe if they come back, everybody can listen to it. If that's okay, you have to ask them if that's okay. Or if they wrote something down, you can read it for them, and that's how they will start seeing that the responses are good and gain confidence. If it's about the speech itself, you really want to make sure that you're providing opportunities for them to speak up and loudly. And a way to gain some insight into how they are is look at them at recess. If they're really loud at recess and really participate, they're obviously willing to speak in front of their friends and peers, and therefore you need to just encourage them to talk about reading, about what they've done, and to encourage them to see that you value their contribution. But if they're shy in front of everybody, then you really need to think about how do you scaffold speaking up. And maybe the first thing is to just speak up about mundane things they know very well, and then slowly make it more challenging. So you scaffold that whole idea of speaking out loud. And it'll take time. That's not something that goes from one day to the next. You have to think about it in very small steps. So these are 3 questions. There were many more, and I will respond to some of them online. And I did want to also point out that I love the fact that you're starting to have a conversation and not just pose the questions, but people are starting to think about examples and responses that help you think through all of that. And I am responding to some of these, so if you've posed questions and you're actually interested in the responses, I would suggest that once in a while you go back and you look at the questions and responses, both of yours and other people. And I did include some resources for thinking about kindergarten. I'm trying to find a place to have some time in class to discuss this, but I think it's a great thing to discuss online. I started a discussion post about that, and I invite everybody to participate in that as well. So have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday.